Hi, I'm Heather Poskovich from Polk City, Iowa. On my first road ultra race, I was the overall winner of the Hoodoo 500. So, welcome to the OhioRAAM show.
Well, hello again, it's Lee Kreider, producer of the OhioRAAM show. What we're doing here, we're trying to play catch up after our little medically enforced hiatus. And we want to thank Heather Poskovich for giving us an introduction to the show. Heather was recorded before this happened, and we will get to her later on, and she'll tell you more about her experience with Hoodoo 500. Also recorded before this hiatus was Eric Pearce, who is going to be on today's show. Eric is a professor of astronomy at the University of Arizona. So we thought it'd be a good idea, if to have one astronomer on, to have the daughter of another famous astronomer, Colin Pellinger, his daughter Shu. Shu is the first and only, I believe, British solo woman to have completed the race across America. And we're glad to have her with us and recognize the contributions made by her family. Be sure to check the show notes. You'll learn there more about Eric Pearce. You'll learn more about Shu Pellinger. You'll learn more about Colin Pellinger and some other things of interest to those of you in the ultracycling family. With that, let's just get on to the show. It's kind of a messed up situation. I have trouble with times, and my time's all messed up as to when we're going to record, and at the present time Becky is nowhere to be found, and that's my fault, not Becky's. I apologize, Becky, for this, but I have our guests here, and while they're here we're going to go ahead with them. But the first person I want to bring on board is my friend Shu Pellinger in England. What's your town again, Shu?
I've actually moved since the last time we chatted. So I'm in a place called Where, which has the oldest joke in the UK of being the answer to where do you live, where. But that's a little town just outside London.
Okay, very good. And glad to see you again here. And the reason why we brought Shu on is because of her father, who has an interest in, her father, who's a well-known astronomer. And to just say a little bit, let me say a little bit about you, Shu. You are a RAM finisher, and I believe you hold the record for British women in the race across America. Do you not?
So at this present time, I am still the only British woman who has finished Race Across America solo, which by default, I'm assuming makes me the fastest British woman to finish Race Across America. And maybe, given there's no other events you can do as fast, perhaps the fastest British woman to cross America by bike.
Okay, very good. And so the reason why we brought you in here is because our guest is an astronomer, and your father's an astronomer. So just for the audience, say a bit about your dad and what he did and why we think so much of him.
Yeah, that's correct. So my father was the man behind Britain's mission to land on Mars in 2003. He ran a little probe called Beagle 2, which was sent to Mars. Unfortunately, back in 2003, we didn't receive a signal from the surface of Mars. However, it was just one project my father worked on. He was also worked on the Rosetta missions to Comet. And back in the day, 50 years ago, he worked on the lunar sample return missions to analyze the samples to see what they were made of. Okay, so unfortunately, my father died 4 years. He died 4 weeks before my first RAM attempt. So he never actually got to see me complete RAM. But we did find in his papers some messages to his American colleagues to tell them that I was planning to take on Race Across America. So I know he would have been proud of me finishing, and he would have been watching out for me.
I'm sure he would. And he also did not get to see his project arrive at the comet, did he not? Shu, we have another astronomer here on the show, Eric Pearce. Eric, how are you?
I'm doing well today, Lee. How are you?
Well, good. And of course, we don't have you here particularly because you're an astronomer, but we have you here because you are a ultra cyclist. So, Shu, say hello to Eric.
Hi, Eric.
Hi, Shu. Good to meet you.
Eric, you have some background with, was it asteroid research or was it comet research or both?
Asteroid research. When I was at MIT, I was the co-I leading the linear program, which discovered at the time more near-Earth asteroids and more asteroids in general than any of the search programs. I've since left Lincoln, and now I'm at the University of Arizona. I'm in the building right next to the one where the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter guys are that actually imaged Beagle 2 on Mars and pulled out that image of the 3 of the 4 solar panels deployed. That
There you go. Small world.
It is.
How's prep going?
Oh, I just got back into the long 7-hour rides after Hoodoo. After I DNF'd at Raw and felt bad and sorry for myself and everything, we drove home. It was only about an hour and a half drive home from where we dropped out of Raw, and began to think of what's next. So I did Hoodoo 500, which was 400 great miles and a 500-mile race, but we made the best of the middle 100 that wasn't as great, but we finished and qualified for RAAM. So we made the decision that we're going to put off RAAM until 2021, and we're going to make another run at RAW in 2020. So that the training for that's just beginning to spin up, and this was a third week of over 100-mile rides, and it's going pretty well so far.
So I didn't know you changed your mind about RAAM for next year, but I'm glad I will still see you in Oceanside. I'm actually going to be crew chiefing next year for Brian Welsh, taking on a solo RAAM. So I will be there at the start, and we can meet for real.
I hope to meet you down in the lot in Oceanside.
Exactly,
I was conflicted about putting off RAAM until 2021, but I turned 60, and I might need those extra hours. And, just from a financial standpoint and everything, you have to ask of your friends to follow you across the country at 18 miles an hour. I tell them it's more fun than it really is. It's a lot to ask. So I really wanted to be ready for RAAM. And I think another year of prep will make a big difference with that.
So I understand that fully. Do you know what you would change from your raw attempt this year for next year?
I think where kind of things went wrong for Raw, I was so convinced that it wasn't going to get hot until Borrego. And I didn't really, and it was obviously hot. I mean, it was well over 100 when we were going through, the coastal range. We had a tailwind going up through Palomar, and it was just hotter than you can imagine. But I wasn't acting like it was hot. I was so set in my mind that we're going to start doing all the desert stuff when we got to the desert. And I got behind on the hydration. I cramped. We probably should have tried a little bit more to recover from that. And I really wasn't expecting day 2 to be 110 degrees in Parker, Arizona, sitting under that scrawny tree. So all of that kind of piled up.
I remember something very similar. My first attempt ended when I crashed on day 9 when I fell asleep on my bike. But the second attempt, I remember the first day how overwhelmingly hot it was, and it was so much hotter than the first year, and that threw me because I suddenly thought, wow, this wasn't what I was expecting, because I got through this bit so easily last time.
Hmm.
what am I doing differently? And it was just the weather.
Yeah, and it was a very cool year in Tucson before Raw. So, I was kind of counting on having the time to train and acclimate in the heat, and we
Mm.
never had that this year. So I wasn't very acclimated. So, this year we're going to really, work the active cooling
Mm.
a lot more ice stuffed in various pieces of clothing. And the crew said they can buy as much ice as I can stuff down my shirt, and we'll see if that's true.
We actually we had an ice chest in the follow vehicle, and I would take one shirt off and actually put it into the ice in the cooler, and let it actually soak and cool down. And then as soon as I warmed up in the next one, I would swap shirts and put the cold one back on. That worked quite well. My crew also had water pistols with ice water in, which they fired at me. Particularly funny in the desert. One of my crew members, James, was dressed as a penguin in the heat of Arizona, jumping around on the side of the road dressed as a penguin is quite funny. And it also cooled me down with his firing water at me.
Well, I had one of those cooling vests, which I bought just for Raw. And, it really didn't help. And it wasn't tight enough. So all the cooling packs on the front of the vest would just kind of hang pointlessly off the front of you. The back ones would last, maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes. You had a heating vest, weighed about 10 pounds. So we're going to try a different approach this year.
Are you going to try the ladies' sports bra? I this is the technique the guys are using.
Amazon has a great selection of those.
I've heard it's the way forward.
I think it probably is too, a nice compression style. But I'm not going to train with it. We'll see how it goes in the desert at night.
You should see in the UK, the soccer players all wear them now. They have like a sports bra on that has a GPS tracker in the back, because they're not allowed to wear watches whilst they're playing matches. So they have all their GPS and their stats and their like Strava equivalent for football in the back of their sports bra. I only saw this when they score and they take the shirt off, and then you see, why are they wearing that?
Well, there was this kind of surreal moment. There are a lot of great moments in Raw, but I remember one of them out somewhere past that past time station 2. We're rolling through the desert at night, and convoys aren't allowed, but the convoys are forming up anyway, because you run into a rider in a follow vehicle, and you just kind of start to stack up. So I'm rolling through the desert, and the whole place is lit up orange, with five vehicles, orange lights, and all the follows, and I'm slowly working my way through, and a European guy comes by, and I was like, that guy was wearing a sports bra. And I was like, wow, this is really weird, kind of surreal, and now I know.
I think anything goes in RAM, anything to get you to the finish line. I think that's what I find amazing about my crew, is they were able to just come up with this stuff as we're going along. So things that we thought about, but actually when it came down to it, and I would say I'm really, really hot, they had plans to do various things to cool me down. I think the key is to make sure you're always talking to your crew, and tell them what it is, tell them how it is. Let them figure out the solutions. Don't wait or hold on to any problem.
Well, we're going to do a couple of things different with the crew this year. Everyone was so excited. None of the crew got any rest first day. So by the time it came to the next 2 in the crew's primary follow, they had already been up 24 hours too. Because they drove into Borrego, they hung out in Borrego. They're always helping. So I basically had 4 people just always engaged and crewing. We need to figure out how to get that first 2, go to Borrego and chill, get some food, get some sleep, So there'll be some different things this year, but the training will be pretty much the same, I think.
I think that's good. At least you know your baseline from last year, and you know where you've got to be. Like I say about RAAM quite a bit. It's really nothing to do with cycling. So actually, you can be as fit as you want as a cyclist. There's so many other things that can happen, or so many things that can go wrong.
Well, and Hoodoo was very encouraging, both in what went well and what didn't go well. Hoodoo, I had 320 miles that just went perfectly. We're hitting high speed bottle feeds. We had very low stop time. I was in the lead for probably 200 miles. Remember coming into the time stations, and the guy there looked at me and said, "You're ahead of Shauna Hogan. How is that?" It's like, yeah, I passed her on the hill way back. Everything was just going fabulous, and then suddenly it wasn't. And I got chilled. I got cold. I got aggravated. I started worrying about what could have been and should have been, and I had the next 100 miles took all day. Before I got my head back together and I got the nutrition back under control. It was 100 miles that took almost 12 hours. But after I got regrouped, the last 100 miles was really, really good. So it was encouraging in a lot of ways that the first 300 went fabulously, and then I could be as low as I thought I could go, and still get back rolling well. And that was very encouraging.
I think definitely make a mental note of that. So the next time you go through that same low, and you will go through the same low in raw, but know that you can come out of it. And I think it's really important to know, how did you get over it before? And you can almost tell yourself, well, I'm not going to spend 100 miles getting over it this time. I'm gonna be over it in 20 miles, and then pull yourself back.
Yeah, I sure hope so, because if I got over it in 20 miles, it would have been a totally different race. But I spent way too much time getting over it, and it was a good lesson.
I think that the highs and lows are you go so high, but also so low the whole way through the race. And you just have to know that, well, the next up's coming, the next down's after that, give me another up.
Well, and then everyone knows where you are nowadays, because everyone has a GPS tracker, and it was so encouraging to have, other athletes, they were rooting for me. They saw me out front, and out ahead, and they saw me, just die out there. We'd be sitting on the side of the road, trying to get me going again, and car would stop, and a guy would get on and say, "Oh, are you Eric Pearce?" And it's like, "Yeah, that's me." And go, "Yeah, we're rooting for you. You can do it." And it was extremely. I mean, it left me touched. It really did. The other athletes in the race were so behind me.
I think that does kind of stick with me as well. Did you watch? You won't have seen much of RAAM while you were racing Raw this year, but there was one American guy, I think American, who he was at the back of the pack, but he started to tell himself he couldn't do it, and that sort of imposter syndrome of, I don't know why I'm here, I'm not going to be able to do this. And they interviewed him on the RAAM media, and he was saying, I just can't do this. This is not going to happen. And it was so emotional. And within 5 minutes of it going up on the Facebook, the number of people who were cheering this guy on and writing messages. And I was doing some of the stats of RAAM, and I was posting going, you're actually increasing your speed. You're the only person who is getting faster in your race. You can't see this and you can't tell, but you are so able to do this. And I think you're right. When you get a bit of support from people behind the scenes, or your crew or other athletes, it does make a difference.
Well, I think it's easy to forget how remarkable what we do really is. I mean, I went on a 140-mile training ride yesterday,
Mm.
4 years ago, and I've been bike racing for 30 years, 35 years, and I would never race a training ride that long. Most people think, riding a bike up 7 hours and 140 miles is pretty remarkable, and we get to a level of fitness where it's just kind of an ordinary weekend. And that's easy to forget. I remember at RAAM when we had, the conversation out in, a sketchy hotel. We're in a sketchy hotel and up there and just beyond Hope. And I forget the name of the town up there, just above Hope, just beyond Hope, ironically.
Yeah, everybody knows the Beyond Hope.
Guys that, I'm a loser and a quitter. I'm dropping out. I've only ridden 340 miles. And they're like, oh my God, 340 miles, that's incredible. When did you start? Like last week? I was like, no, sometime yesterday, and, they just thought it was just so mind-boggling, and I felt, extremely discouraged about it at the time. But, it really was, quite an achievement just to get that far.
Yeah, you do have to catch yourself occasionally and think, put everything in perspective. It is actually crazy.
Well, I'm going to jump in here. Listen, this has turned out to be wonderful, despite the shaky start. This conversation between the two of you, I love it, and I just wanted to say how much I appreciate that. A comment here on the OhioRAAM show. I don't know, maybe Shu has heard this, but we say there's 4-letter words we don't allow on the air. And one of them among ultra cyclists is the word only. And the other is just. Because I hear people say, well, I'm only going to do raw. And I'm thinking, there isn't one person in a million that can do this. And you're saying only?
Well, when I got out to Oceanside, it did kind of feel like I was doing the 5K at the marathon.
Well, when you go in there and you see Ballo and you see Strasser and these guys, you think, what the hell am I doing here? But
I think there is that. I think if I can bring it back to space a bit, I just think, all I was doing was cycling across a country, but my dad sent a rocket to another planet. But my achievement just looked quite average. I guess I don't know whether Eric feels this as an astronomer. The distances just on Earth are just tiny compared to what's out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is, and a lot of the, the ties I try to get to my students and why I like elite competition is, because it's a rehearsal for life, and you get to attempt things in ultra cycling, especially, that you don't get to do every day, and that you're not sure you're going to be successful. RAAM was the first race I had done in probably 30 years that I wasn't sure I would be able to finish or not. And very few people, a lot of students, never really even think about attempting something that they're not sure they can be successful at. And in your professional career, it's very hard to take a risk like that. But in athletics, you can take risks like that. I'll start RAAM again in June. I'll attempt RAAM the following year, and there can be no lifelong consequences if I fail, if I don't finish. It will matter more to me than it will to anyone else. It's not going to change my my retirement outlook. It's not going to change my finances. It's not going to change my career. It's just a rehearsal and a challenge that is safe in a lot of ways. And you can capture those lessons and apply them to your entire life. And, I get to ride with the university cycling team. I got to talk to them before RAW and after RAW, and you see that these kids developing these skills and their life skills, and they're developing it through athletics. And, it's really fun and cool to watch.
It's got, I don't think I've really thought about it that way before, that it does give you an opportunity to try something. I think when I went into RAAM the first time, I was so convinced that I could do it. I trained really hard. I prepared really well. I had such an awesome crew. I was really convinced I could do it. I just fell asleep. I fell asleep and broke my collarbone, which was pretty pretty drastic way to end the race. But I guess also because that happened, I also then still knew I really could do it. It's just as long as I could stay on my bike and stay awake. But I do feel a bit sorry for people who don't really go through those lows of something not working out the way they anticipated. You see people who every race they do really, really well in, and there's no challenge, and it's, oh, you're going to win again. Oh yeah, okay. I feel a bit sorry for them that they miss all these kind of learning points, and they miss the kind of the problem areas that you've got to get over, and the mistakes and the pain and agony of it all going wrong.
Yeah, I mean, because there are two things, because I've been road racing for, a long, long time, over 3 decades. And ultra cycling, it started just in 2014 or so. But the two unique challenges to it are, there is no huge body of knowledge as to how to do ultra cycling training, ultra cycling, and in the event even. So you're really kind of figuring out a lot more of it on your own. But the other thing is the events are so long that something's going to go wrong during that. And there's a lot of time out there with yourself, with your head, that you have to keep your head together. You have to fight the negative thoughts, keep them out, stay mindful, and stay moving ahead. And it's a challenge that really isn't in regular racing. It's easy to keep your head for a 2-hour race. It's easy to race a lot and have a lot of 2-hour races that go perfectly. And if a 2-hour race doesn't go perfectly, there'll be one next week.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I remember when I was training for RAAM, and somebody said, "So you're going to go and ride 3,000 miles in preparation in one go?" And I was like, "No, I don't have another 2 weeks to take off work to practice riding the whole thing." You can only practice so much of it. So maybe you can do a 2-3 day event, but you're never going to do anything longer than that. So you don't actually know what's going to happen after day 3 on something as long as RAAM. But I think you're right about spending a lot of time with yourself when all your training is alone, and you're doing all that, and you're training your brain and your mind to deal with being on your own. I mean, personally, I find that much harder than the actual race where I'm with a crew, because I love having the crew there. I love having people to talk to. I love the camaraderie and the chat and the banter whilst it's happening. After RAAM, I actually tried Transcontinental over in Europe, which was a self-supported ride, and I just didn't like being in my own head. I didn't like being on my own, dealing with it all by myself. I wanted to be able to turn to somebody and say, "Hey, did you see that?" or talk through things. And I just found it really lonely and depressing. That but I wouldn't have found that out. I wouldn't have found it out without trying, right?
Yeah, well, that's interesting because, with all the technology, when we have a Toronto headset, I don't spend a lot of time with my crew cheering in my ear, as I call it. Occasionally we talk, but usually, I feel like I'm on my own. Even in direct follow, I forget that they're back there. You can hear the groan of the tires and the cycling of the fan, on the engine. I remember at Hoodoo, I had kind of forgotten that they were back there, and then I get this crackle in my ear. Well, I hear them driving off the road. Hear suddenly gravel, come back on, and then about 2 seconds later, my wife comes on and says, "We need to change drivers." And it's like, okay, sounds like a really good idea. I heard you drive off the road too. But we don't spend a lot of time talking to each other, but I know they're there. And
I think I probably. Sorry, I think I probably spent more time talking to my crew than they really wanted to talk to me. I'd be on the radio going, "Is anyone there? Somebody talk to me." I think I'm going to see this the other way around next year, because I'm actually going to be a crew chief for Brian Welsh. And I mean, Brian and I know each other quite well, but I don't know what he's going to be like 3, 4 days, 5 days into the race. Is he going to want to hear from me? Is he going to want to engage in chat? And actually, I might have to adapt my style a little bit with somebody else. He's a very accomplished long distance cyclist, unsupported as well. He's quite happy to ride for hours and hours on his own. So maybe I'm going to have to change a little bit for that.
Okay. Well, listen, this has been quite interesting. But Shu, tell me, what have you been up to? I think you've been doing some tri events, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been doing a bit of all sorts, actually.
Some mud racing.
Yeah, I got back into triathlon, which is really where I got into ultra distances from, where I sort of took a step up from Ironman to double Ironman and just doing silly long cycling. So I've been doing a bit of triathlon. I've been racing in a GB kit, which is quite exciting. But more than that, I've been trying to do different types of biking. So mountain biking. I did an enduro a couple of weeks ago, which was quite funny. I'm a little bit timid on the downhills, and I have 8-year-olds going past me really quickly. But hasn't put me off. We've just entered a 5-day mountain bike race called Trans Madeira. So that's in the summer, just before RAAM. So I'm going to be throwing myself down some big mountains, and then crewing for Brian, and then I've got an Ironman literally 3 days after we finish RAAM. So I'm going to have to fly back to Austria to do Ironman Austria.
Okay, very well. Well, listen, thank all of you for being here. Again, I'm sorry for the screw up, but somehow in the RAAM vernacular, you adapt, innovate, and overcome. And in the process, I think we had a wonderful conversation between the two of you. I appreciate that a great deal. So thank you all for being with us.
No worries at all. I'm looking forward to seeing Eric on the start line. I think your approach is really good, really mature to actually take some time to have another go at RAW and really learn what it's about.
Well, yeah, raw in my mind is that quintessential prerequisite, and I want to know that I can ride into Durango and feel like I could keep going.
Yeah.
Before I actually commit to doing that.
There are some good bars in Durango, though, so you have to try and get past those.
Okay, very well. Well, thank you, Eric, for being on the show. Thank you for Shu for joining us once again. It's always good to have you on the show. We want to thank all of you for watching. We thank all of you who support the show so faithfully. That means a lot. If you want to know when the next show is going to happen, just check in on the OhioRAAM Show page on Facebook or here on the website, OhioRAAMshow.com. They'll appear, and if you'd like to have email notices, there'll be a place there where you can add your email address, and we'll notify you the next time a show appears. Thank you, and goodbye.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.